Hello friends, I am Yugen Kulkarni. In this video, we are starting chapter 2 from 11th physics. The name of chapter is mathematical methods. So, we know what are the scalars. The scalars are physical quantities which have only magnitude and they do not have direction. For example, energy, time, temperature, density, etc. Similarly, we have another type of physical quantities which are called vectors. Vectors have magnitude as well as direction. Now, we are going to see some types of vectors. The first type is zero vector, or it is called as null vector. So what does this mean? So here, as this is vector, it will have some direction, but the magnitude of the vector will be equal to 0, and this can be written as zero vector. So now this 0 is telling us the magnitude, and this arrow shows this is a vector. So what direction it can be? So it can be in any direction, because this has magnitude 0, so we can tell this is in the any direction. Now, is there any example of this zero vector? Yes. If the body is not moving, then we can say the speed is equal to 0. But if we have to tell the velocity, that is the vector, then we can say velocity is a zero vector. So for a stationary body, velocity vector is equal to zero vector. There is another type of vector called as resultant vector. So what is the resultant vector? Resultant vector is the vector which we get after adding two or more number of vectors. Suppose if I add these three vectors and I get another vector, so we will represent this as r bar, and this is addition of this all three vectors. So we will call this as resultant vector. Then another type of vector is negative vector. Suppose A is a vector in this direction and the vector of same magnitude but the direction is opposite to that is called negative of A vector, or we can also call it as opposite vector. So negative vector and opposite vector are the same vectors, just the names are different. The next type of the vectors is equal vectors. So for this also we need more than one vector. So this should be equal vectors. So what are those vectors? Suppose this is one vector and there is another vector. Let's say this is A bar and this is B bar. Then if we can say those vectors A and B are equal, then their direction should be same. So in this case they are pointing in the same direction, this is the direction, and their magnitude should be same. So the length of the arrow must be equal. In that case only these two vectors are equal vectors. If we have the vectors of same magnitude but they are in different directions, then we will not call them as equal vectors. For example, this is a C vector and this is a vector D. Suppose vector C and vector D are having same magnitude, but we can see that these are in the different direction. The arrow is pointing in different direction. So we will not call them as equal vectors. Another type of vectors is a position vector. This is a very important concept in physics. We can draw a graph of x versus y axis, and this is origin. So the position vector of any point is given by an arrow pointing from the origin to that point. Suppose this is a point P. So the arrow from O to P is called as position vector, and which is denoted by r bar. So this is called the position vector. we can also write this as r bar is equal to op bar. Another type of vector is called as unit vector. Unit means 1. So in this case the vector has the magnitude equal to 1. Like we have seen the 0 vector which has 0 magnitude, unit vector have magnitude equal to 1. Suppose m bar is a vector and its unit vector is given by u of m cap, or we can also call this as vector, and m is a magnitude. Then a vector can be written as the magnitude into the unit vector. So every unit vector are represented by the cap on the head. So in general the vectors are written the arrow overhead like vector A, but the unit vectors are written by cap overhead. So suppose A. So this is in general vector. This can have any number of magnitude 1, 2, 1000, -4, -17. But this A cap will only have the magnitude equal to 1. So this is called unit vector.